Hi, my name is Steve Schmidt, your host for this week's episode of Maker Connect. We are well past our 20th episode now, and we are coming into a little bit of what we call a new season here. Not only is it getting to be fall and towards winter, we're actually diversifying a little bit. And a lot of our earlier guests were called revenue leaders, and then we are on the left side of the table. On that other side of the negotiating table is always a procurement professional, especially in the enterprise, who's looking after the deal as well. And so you've been seen and hearing from a lot of procurement professionals, and we'll continue that on for the next 3 months. We are stocked right now. We have two openings through November. Other than that, we have guests fully booked with Fortune 1000 companies, publicly traded companies, some real good war stories. But today, we get to settle in with a guy who I know this brand. This brand is a brand that if I needed to get something quick and convenient and reliable and feel like it was the McDonald's of print, it was Alpha Graphics. I don't know, Corey, if you've ever heard that comparison before, but I knew what to expect. Behind that, though, is Corey Sawatski, a very good Midwestern name, and also a lot of little parts and pieces that all go together to make that such a great experience that feels exactly how it should every single time. And there's a lot of billions of parts that go into that and negotiations, Corey, that I'm sure have taken you all over the world. So, Corey, welcome to Maker Connect. We're so glad to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, as well as how you got into this crazy idea. Because I don't know a lot of people who, when they grow up, go, "I want to be a director of procurement."
Yeah, thanks. Again, Corey Sawatski, Vice President of Alpha Graphics Operations and Purchasing. Yeah, so kind of crazy. I studied computer science in college, tripped and fell into printing at an early stage, and leveraged my knowledge in computers and technology in a time when printing was merging with that technology. Through that, met a lot of great people. Consolidated Graphics out of Houston, Texas. Worked there for a long time. Got to know a gentleman by the name of Ryan Ferris, who's now the president of Alpha Graphics. I started my own company in Nashville doing consulting in the printing space, and then was hired back by Ryan to move up here to Denver, Colorado, become that vice president of purchasing and operations for both Alpha Graphics and PostNet brands. So I've been here for 5 years, and that's it.
That's it. Yeah, just probably negotiating a few $1 billion of deals. That sounds, I guess, for lack of a better term, sexy, right? But I mean, really, it's probably not as sexy as maybe it sounds. But it also involves some skill, some mastery. And what we like to do is sort of demystify negotiations. The story I tell about myself and how I got to know the Maker Group and why I'm in this seat today is I knew that my biggest weakness as a seller. Well, I'll tell you the story. This is what hurt me. I heard it and I remember I was like, oh man. They said, if we want to close the deal, send Steve in. If we want to make money on the deal, send anybody else in. And I was like, oh, but it really stung. I mean, but I didn't do anything about it until I owned my own company because then it really stung. When you don't know how to look after money per se, or you're not negotiating in the right way, because there certainly are, just like anything in life, methods to the madness that have been proven to be most effective. That was my first story, and where I say that's where I started to take it seriously. Now, Corey, I'm not going to go become a you know big global leader of procurement like you out of it, but my life got better and I got more profitable. You find a lot of joy in doing that on a daily basis. How did you get that sick and twisted plot in your life to get so good at Alpha Graphics? Because you're obviously very good at what you do. What was the first time in your life where it occurred to you that I'm interested in this topic of procuring things and making a profit for a company and being a good partner? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, talking about Consolidated Graphics, when I worked there and I stepped up into the procurement role there, one of the first things that really stuck out to me in that space was the ability to partner with big companies to create good business for both sides. One of the first deals that I did with Consolidated Graphics had to do with HP, tiny little company that some people have heard of. They sell very elaborate printing devices, And these printing devices can be upward of $1 million to $1.5 million each. And what I found is that in dealing with those pieces of equipment, they make very, very complex pieces of equipment that hold a lot of value. And when I started talking to them, I was inspired by the fact that their technology was so advanced. I felt like they could bring a lot of value to us. And really identifying that value, I was able to establish what the worth of that equipment was. So instead of going to them and saying, okay, how much do you sell it for? I look at it from a value perspective. I say, okay, what value does this bring to my company? What is it ultimately going to do for me? And then go
Yeah.
backward from there to create an ROI to establish the valued cost of a piece of equipment and go from there.
Yeah.
And and it's
Yeah.
a good way to start that negotiation, that discussion, is to understand how I'm going to make money from that, and therefore what it's worth to me. And then I can be fair to them in establishing a relationship and a business going forward with them.
You said something, let's touch on that, being fair. For those who are in the profession like you, I think that makes a lot of sense. To those of us sitting on the outside, oh, I guess I get to exclude myself. I'm inside the podcast with you, and I'm inside the club of people trained on negotiation. I think that we have watched movies and cartoons our whole life where like the negotiation gig is up, like or Chris Voss came across my desk. I love the book he wrote, Never Split the Difference. I think it teaches salespeople some good things, but I don't know if hostage negotiation translates really well to real life. I think it's great in terms of it was inspirational to me, but I don't know if that it still to me paints this story that we're at war with the other person, if that makes sense. And we don't see it that way. Like we try to see it differently. Like we're always going to come to the table collaboratively, pardon me, and but also cautiously because we have things like AI now where you could, for all intents and purposes, Corey, study the whole team and look at their personality traits and figure out exactly what you think they will do and what move you should make when based off of what they say on social media. And it's gotten really tech driven. But let's go old school for a second. When you approach negotiations, what is your preferred method that you would teach your team, that you would call it be known for if somebody else said, hey, how does Corey negotiate? How would you classify that style?
I, I like to create a partnership based on transparency. Right off the bat, I'm going to come to the table and throw out my expectations. I'm going to say, look, here's what we need. Like if it's a product or it's a service or whatever it is, I'm going to first establish the ground rules. It's like, look, this is what I'm expecting. And then say, the table's open. Please tell me what you can bring to that table. Tell me where we're starting, and go about that, first to set expectations. But then beyond that, the term transparency, I use it all the time. There is nothing wrong with being open with what your expectation is, and some of that is a soft budget. I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to spend, but I will
Yeah.
tell you an approximation of the value that I see. Right? I'm going to say, look,
Yeah.
this is what I need to be able to get done, and then open that up. But there's a fine line. You talked about, like a hostage, negotiation type
Yeah.
situation. There's a fine line between like persistence and aggression, right? I don't mind
Yeah.
somebody who's persistent, like stay on me because I'm a busy person. Please remind me, of it. Stay in my brain, but
Yeah.
don't be aggressive. Don't say we're drawing a line on you have to sign before the end of the month. Don't tell me
Yeah.
that, whatever this deal is going to be gone because, okay, if the deal is going to be gone, you're not coming back to the table. Persistence, not aggression, and then
Yeah.
transparency. It truly is a partnership. And again, it's very important to remember that in a buyer scenario, I want for my vendor, my partner to be healthy. I want them to have a
Yeah.
good business so that I can continue to do business with them and grow with them. So from my side, the term fair sits there because it honestly is important for my partners to
Yeah.
be healthy as a business.
For a lot of reasons, right?
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons. And I didn't coming into negotiation, the one thing I didn't see was what you said was this word of partnering, right? Collaborating. I always thought when procurement came up, especially internal pricing team when I was at T-Mobile, I would remember them at, oh, this is such a big deal. I just want to get it pushed through. Oh, and they said, now we're going to introduce you to the pricing team. I said, oh, this sucks. Like now we email them like a salesperson just wants to go sell the deal. And now we had another reason to complain because, it would take a day or it would take 2 days and really to look at the deal. And they might come back and say, no, we're not going to discount the handset full, but we would do 80 of 120 at no cost. I mean, they just had a deal calculator, right? They knew exactly their payback. In software, they call it CAC, right? And certain like, when am I going to get to payback mode? Which is an interesting kind of negotiation because when you're an early stage company, I think you negotiate differently, safe to say, than a company like an Alpha Graphics where you can't miss on your profit projections. You can't miss when you're a company that reports to a board and investors because you won't miss again because you won't be there. And so we all want profit. Talk to me about, we're going to wind it back here. So although that sounds serious, talk to me about the first time that you knew that a deal went the wrong way. Like you maybe lost the deal, or you knew that it was a deal where you said, man, like that one, or maybe it was 5 years later looking back on it when you said, I wish I could do that again. Walk through that deal and tell us the story about that. I think we'll all sit back and laugh a little bit because we've all had them, even big, probably especially big directors and VPs of global procurement, because that's what you do every day. So tell us about that story.
Yeah, that's kind of a fun one. Well, actually, it actually happened at Alpha Graphics. When I came on, you always when you start a new with a new job at a new company, you want to come in with a splash. You want to do something big. You want to make a difference. And when I came on, it's somewhat boring, I suppose. But what I did was I decided that Alpha Graphics as a company, as a brand, is fairly large. So is Postnet, and then our global head MBE out of Europe is even larger. We have a big space. But here in the United States and in the printing space, we're still a fairly small player in that space. There are some buying groups that you can join to make yourself part of a larger buying group, and a lot of people leverage those to get discounts and better pricing on certain spaces that maybe they're not that big in by themselves. I stepped into that. There are a few of those in the print space that offer those things, but in the details, what I didn't take into account was there were minimums for you to take part in those. So I went through all this effort to put in a program for us to join as a group and to take part of this group buying power. But even after I did all that, did all the signups, got us going, what I found is in all that effort, we were going to actually see no value because we weren't meeting the minimums to get us those discounts. And I missed in all of my effort, tiny detail, and in such ended up dissolving the deal after a year, and it really didn't go anywhere. And it was a large effort for nothing. So at the end of the day, it's a matter of the details, right? If you're going to be doing this, man, there are just so many parts that you have to take into consideration. And that one just bit me right off the bat, and but you learn, these are different things that as you do thousands of deals, there's just these little details that you will never forget again. And that one for me was that was the one that got me.
We've talked a lot about how you got into negotiations. We've talked about a story where you've wish you could do it again. A lot of people haven't had any of those opportunities. They look at negotiation in the movies. You see it in real life. What do you think the difference is that you could articulate when you say, well, this is how people are seen and or this is the movies say. This is how it is in real life, and this is the difference. What does that look like?
Oh man, it's a world of difference. I mean, if you look at real life and TV, right, they're massively different, and it's no different with negotiation or what I do. You see in the movies, it's somebody pounding on the table and demanding discounts, and it's this big, thing. It's the iron fist. In reality, when you go into that room, it is instantaneously, to me, it's at a level of friendship. It's a partnership. I'm walking into that room knowing that the closer I am to this person, the more we can be transparent to each other, have a partnership, and talk openly. the easier it is for me to get to the end game and the quicker we can come to that end game. If they're honest with me, I can be honest with them and we can just say, look, we both have a job to do. We both have things that we want to accomplish. Let's be honest with each other so that we can get to the end game faster and move on to the important stuff. And then furthermore, as we grow in that partnership, we can go bigger and know that we trust each other to step into that partnership and move forward. It's way more personal than it would seem like in the movies. It's not a
Yeah.
me forcing you to do something because that is not a healthy relationship. It's me discussing with you how we create a trust and a partnership to move into that level of partnership, that negotiation. So
Yeah.
yeah.
How do you distill that down to your team? I mean, are you working with a team today that you oversee on a daily basis? How do you instill that in your culture? Is it via software? Is it via this is just how we do it? Is it a playbook that you've written out? Because I think a lot of things we've heard too is that sales oftentimes is a playbook, right? They say this is how you sound when you cold call. This is what you say when you leave a voicemail. And when it comes to negotiations, they go, "Where's my playbook?" Like,
Mhm.
what do I say first? Or do we all just have different styles? And God forbid we all get in the room at the same time. We're arguing all with each other as well as everybody else across. What does that look like? And how do you manage that culture?
You said a strong word right there, culture. The way that you negotiate really depends on the person you're sitting across the table from. The person that
Mhm.
comes in to offer you a service or a product or whatever, there's different, like you just talked about playbooks for sales. There's different playbooks and they all have a different one. The way that I distribute, the culture, the process or whatever is really through learning. It's through bringing them into those rooms. People that work with me, they tend to spend a lot of time with me in that room, negotiating, partnering, like doing those things for a while before I turn them loose into doing it on a grander scale with, many of our partners. I personally think that you have to be able to read the room.
Yeah.
If you've ever played poker, they say half the game is being able to tell from somebody's face, what they're holding in their hand. And quite honestly, I believe in that wholeheartedly. I believe that when you
Yeah.
sit down at that table, you let them speak. You say, okay, tell me about what you got and what it is. And you can tell from their introduction, their demeanor, how they deliver, like those things, how they should be partnered with, how you speak to them, how you get close to them. That all comes out in their demeanor at the table. And to me, it's more of a feeling. It's not really, I'm sure it's a playbook and I might be able to document, some of it, but to me, it's just kind of it's a learned response from their stance, I guess is the best I could frame it.
Well, Michael, I mean, let's bring it out the human element. A lot of these are learned behaviors or traits from when we were children and how we formed sort of those systems of negotiating, right? Because that might be the only example we had. Now, if we went to finance school and we've been through some Harvard Business University negotiation stuff, and we're familiar with it different, but everybody has to negotiate their first deal, right? At some point in your life, if you're going to call it move up in business, somebody's going to look at you and be like, "Hey, Corey, you've got this," and they're going to look at you a month later and go, "How's it going?" Because you bought this big thing, you got the blessing. Now, oh, by the way, you have to go deliver on the thing you said that thing would do if you got that thing. I.e., I buy a big $1 million printer. I can now produce this many documents. The ROI is very simple, right? We need this because of this. In new purchases that aren't called replacing a technology, where it's maybe less about a replacement, more about a forklift removal, I think that these deals can take years. And I believe that they're one up front, but now you just need to go through that 2 year implementation process of trust. What's the biggest deal you've ever worked on? And what was it like to establish trust in that? And then how long did it take to close the deal, i.e., reach the signature from the first time that deal was socialized with two parties?
There's two that come to mind. One was simply the purchase of, when I was at Consolidated, we did all of the printing for the Apple photo book internationally. We, throughout that process, were able to build that business to several $100 million, and we flew to Germany to pay and buy 20 of these very large printers. And that was more established through the business, and we were able to do it. And it was just probably the largest single purchase. The one that had the most impact, though, quite honestly, was a software in that same company that we partnered with. I went to Joe Davis, who is the head of Consolidated Graphics, and I told him, we own 72 printers in the United States. And I said, Joe, we need this software. And Joe would always boil it back to money. How he did that was very country of him. I'd say, Joe, we need to do this. And he'd say, why? And I'd say, well, because it does this. And he'd say, okay. So I'd say, well, it does this. So why? So why? Until I said, well, it's going to save us money. As soon as I said
Yeah.
that, and he's like, all right, go forward. So we did. It was about a
Yep.
$40,000 software that I installed over 20 companies. And the idea is that it would increase repeatability, which is more of a liability thing, but it would reduce labor. It
Yep.
just automated a lot of things. And a year later, he came back to me. He said, all right, go ahead. And I did it. Came back to me a year later and he said, so? And I had to go back out and I had to
Prove it
go
out.
back and prove it out. And I did. It
Yeah.
ended up, we either reduced labor or decreased hiring by 55 people over a 1 year period, saved the company several $1 million on about an $800,000 investment. So it was about a half
Mhm.
year ROI on the investment.
Yeah.
And it was a big move. It was a good one. It was one that we could quantify over that year. And it felt good to make that
Mhm.
decision, have Joe call me out on it. But it was a lot of fun.
I love that story. It brought me right back down memory lane too. I was just thinking about all the times that I mean that's a big deal. That's a when people I think listening, if you're in procurement, you're going to see big deals before, but you're feeling differently about it because you're maybe spending the company's money. You get a little bit of a target on your back. Where if you're the salesperson bringing it in, right, you got a pat on the back. Everybody's so happy for you. I think that's where we see the two sides of the table coming together to say, even with sales reps, especially with the best sales reps, they're forming trust very early on. They're establishing credibility. And therefore, I feel like those are the people who are adding their value in addition to prospect, which makes it very interesting when you stack those things, right? In terms of like a talent stack. And I think that's with AI now, I think it's going to be something that people look at and go, will I potentially as someone who's called a number cruncher, which people are way more than that, but there are those people in big companies. What happens if AI can do my job for me? What if it can negotiate the contract, say what we want to get, hold with a poker face when you need to, but mass adoption seems like a long ways away. Walmart released an article that said something about, or there was an article written about Walmart stating that something between 40 and 55%. Now, do we really know? We don't know. But AI absolutely is here in negotiation. If you Google AI software for negotiation, it's out there. There's 4 or 5, 6 players who can now start doing this for you in this space, doing it for procurement teams, doing it for sales teams so they can take the emotion out, right? And I think that's interesting. I want to get your thoughts. This is our final question before we wrap up on AI in the negotiation procurement space. Are you using it today? What are your thoughts on it? And do you plan to use it in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great topic. It's huge. Everywhere I go, people are talking about AI. So, do I use it? Yes. I think that if you're not using it as a baseline for
Mhm.
before I go into any meeting, especially with new opportunities, in my research, I use AI a ton just to find out more
Mhm.
about the people in the company that I'm meeting with right off the bat. And then as far as processes go, you can use it if you're going through a process. You can even ask it like, how should I go about doing certain things? And I use it to that level. But in the end, like the way that I see it is there's a monotony to the things that we do every day in any process, and negotiating is no
Mhm.
different, right? It's those repeatable things that we don't need to do. It's the lower level thinking that's not really thinking. It's just the
Mhm.
process, right? And those processes can be replaced. That's not what we bring to the table of value as humans, as people, as professionals. if we can take that repeatable monotony out of what we do, it allows us to step up into a more powerful, more valuable role as what we bring as a one-off thinker, and the ideas that come out of that. So it frees up space, it frees up capacity for us to do
Hmm.
things on a bigger scale and to be more valuable to the companies that we work for and to ourselves, to spend our time doing bigger, better things. And that's where I feel like immediately takes over. It's like, okay, let it do the lower level, monotony, repeatable things that aren't worth my time. And let me spend that time creating value in the partnerships that I deal with and thinking out of the box for what the future looks like and what we can do different, change how we think. That to me is really exciting. I am super excited about AI
Yeah.
and what it brings to the table. I'm not scared at all. I'm ready.
Yeah.
10 years from now, somebody said the other day, they said, what are you going to be doing in 20 years if you could do anything you want? And the guy said, I guess I'll do whatever the robots tell me to do, and I thought that was hilarious. I was like, you know what? If on a day to day I don't have to think about certain things, that's fine with me. Leave my time to the more valuable thinking. So I look forward to the
I think
future of AI.
you saw the article on Anguilla, the country, right? Their country initial was AI. And so that was their government site. And someone said, now let's all learn together. .co, right? All these like there's a lot of them all of a sudden you go, oh, those are countries. And they owned the .ai, which is the AI code. So their negotiation was everybody that time that somebody buys a domain name that ends in AI, they get 10% of the proceeds. So far, they have netted $3.8 million in 6 months.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Who
That was an
knew?
accident. But if you think about it, like the first day that AI came out, although it's been out for a long time, I mean, I went, for example, company website on a data.ai on a, even a 10, 20 person company, 20, 40, $50,000 for a domain name just to end in AI. So I think that was a deal that was greatly negotiated in the nick of time because what happened is everybody raced to it. They said nobody could buy these. And they said they're already owned by this country. And the initial bids were 10 or $20. Due to demand that day, they drove it up. Some were sold for two, three, $400,000. And so I say, man, I wish I was that lucky in all my negotiations. I'd be rich and retired. And Corey, you and I would be on that island instead of on this podcast right now.
I would be willing to do that podcast too.
Yeah. Well, talk to me about Alpha Graphics. Talk to me about the print industry as we wrap up. What are you thinking as you head into 2024 are the biggest trends that, because with trends comes purchases, with trends comes shifts, right? So as we wrap up, where is Alpha Graphics positioned as you head into the end of the year, wrapping into 2024?
Yeah, so I mean, starting at the basics, we're refocusing on, the foundational pieces of printing, like, mailing is a big focus for us, variable print, direct mail, that kind of thing. Through COVID, I think it was a rebirth of mail. Mail became your interaction with the outside world. You get your mail and it's tactile, it's something fun. So we're seeing a kind of a rebirth in that space, a growth in that space. Another thing is wide format, signs, window walls, and floors, that kind of thing. But inside of that space, there are some detailed areas like direct to fabric is coming out with new technology. So there are different ways to create even one-off shirts, pants, hats, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Your promotional products, those kinds of things, and the very complex technology that surrounds that allows you to print a one-off shirt, one shirt that's nobody else has that shirt, or something, you want on it. Like I find something funny, I'm kind of goofy that way, and I'll have one shirt printed that has my joke on it, whatever. Those
Yeah.
technologies. So direct to fabric is another big one coming up in that space. And then the packaging
Cool.
space as well. So like personalized boxes. So like in the work from home world, you go to work for somebody, next day you get a box in the mail that's your personalized new employee, and it's all your
Yeah.
swag, it's your,
Yeah.
all your pens and whatever. So those
They
are some
love that.
areas we're focused on. Yeah, really cool stuff.
That's very cool. I think you guys do great work. I think that, if you haven't heard of Alpha Graphics, little plug from me here. Anytime you need anything, anytime, whether it's a postcard, Christmas card, wedding invite, or something done digitally for your business as well, this is a company that does all of those things. I made the reference, and this is kind of off the record, call it the McDonald's of print, where you sort of know what to expect every time. It's very repeatable, scalable, which involves a lot of negotiation, a lot of moving parts. So thank you so much for your time today and spending it with us because we learned a lot. We also learned that print is not as easy as it seems, Corey. We know that. Still, here we are, right? Nobody got rid of printers. Everybody was asking about that question. Very much a fabric of our life. So, Corey, where can people find you on the internet here before we tag out? So if they have questions about you, anything you talked about today or Alpha Graphics, they can go ahead and find you. So where can that be?
Yeah, absolutely. We're on most of the major, channels, Facebook, Instagram, of course, LinkedIn, but alphagraphics.com, very simple to go find us. As far as me, look for my name on, especially on LinkedIn. If you want to find me, reach
Yeah,
out, ask any questions. I love to talk to you.
love it, man. And the last name, if you can't see it, spelled Sawatzki, first name Corey without an E, Cory. So, Corey, thanks again for joining us from the team from Alpha Graphics. I know it's Friday when we're recording this. It's getting to be fall. And so enjoy that beautiful weekend out in Denver, Corey. And thank you so much for joining Maker Connect, where we talk about the art and science of negotiation.